Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington. Joining me, as always, Mr. Kevin Durso. Kevin, how's it going?
It's going well. Did anything happen while we were away?
Man, I was about to mention that not only have we been away for quite a while. It feels like we've been super inconsistent because we missed a week beforehand.
Did anything happen while we were away?
That happened in the meantime. In case you missed it, by the way, the Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. I know that we're a Philadelphia Flyers podcast. That will indeed be the focus of the show, but we would be remiss if we did not mention that. Listen, we may not both follow all four sports all the time, but at the end of the day, push comes to shove, we're all 4 for 4 here at YWT. And as you're kind of diving in with us here, make sure to follow us on social media at YWT Podcast. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso everywhere except for Blue Sky, where it's just at Kevin Durso. But yeah, so we are, like I mentioned, we are 4 for 4 fans here. Real quick, Kevin, before we dive into the hockey, what did you do for the Super Bowl?
The same exact thing I did for Super Bowl 52, which was just watch it at my parents' house.
We love
just watch with my dad, and I don't care what the score was. We weren't convinced at 24, at 27. It was maybe not until 34 that we were finally feeling a little more relaxed.
I felt pretty good to be honest.
I felt good, but I still wasn't taking anything for granted is the point.
Right. I didn't take anything for granted. No, of course.
I was gonna say we've only been trained to be skeptics. You know, like you're always a little skeptical that the other shoe is going to fall at any point.
Absolutely. I really think Devontae Smith is what locked it in for everybody, and it was a really fun night. I will go ahead and say this on the radio. I have said this multiple times. I know we're not on radio, but you know what I mean.
I like it though. I like it.
I have tweeted it. I have texted it to multiple people. I stand by this. Okay. It's been, like I mentioned, it feels like it's been a month since our last show. It's only been about 2 weeks. Sack, pick six is the greatest 3-play sequence in Philadelphia Eagles history.
Yeah, it's right up there. That's for sure. I mean, the funny part is
in those circumstances.
Yes.
Come on, man.
I was like, you just pretty much dropped the 2 plays that are going to be the ones that I think we see forever. The pick six and the Devontae Smith touchdown. Those are the 2 I think that will, because you look for the lasting impact from the other one, which is Philly special and the strip sack. That's your 2 plays. This one would be pick six and probably that dagger touchdown. More than anything, because the other touchdowns, for what it's worth, weren't exactly as monumental. It didn't feel like okay, standard tush push on the goal line. Okay, an AJ Brown red zone touchdown. All right, nothing, like you're just doing what you're supposed to do. You had a pick six.
Cooper DeJean. Come on, man.
Cooper DeJean, who the day after they won the NFC Championship game was riding the Zamboni at the Flyers game and got a pretty nice ovation there. He's been all over the place in the last 2 weeks. He has turned into a rock star.
And has already cemented his place in Philadelphia Eagles history.
In 1 year as a rookie. Yep. Unbelievable. On his birthday, too.
Rookie. Yep. Him and Saquon. Happy birthday. Here's a ring. Okay. Hopefully, we're going to turn to a team that's not quite as much fun to talk about. But listen, there's things to like.
You know, we're going to get to something in a little later that will have a lot more detail because that's really the bulk of the last 2 weeks. I got to just tell you, though, the last handful of days, I feel like I've been on a media tour myself because it's been like a lot of attention all of a sudden. You know, I know football's over and that kind of opens the door for some of this to begin with. But, you know, usually and this is kind of of a running joke of sorts. And you know this, I'm sure you've heard this before. There's a lot of, people who will sit there and say something and it's very like my sport mentality. Like from a hockey perspective, that we have that it's such a niche audience that it's like if you're trying to project it to anything further than that, it's very please like my sport, whatever. This has almost happened organically, like over the last several days, and all of a sudden it's like everybody wants to talk hockey.
Well, here's the thing, and you alluded to it earlier, but there was a large well-publicized international tournament that just happened over the last 2 weeks. A couple of flyers featured, including a starting goaltender who got a start. We'll talk about that. There's a lot of eyes on this team because, Travis Konechny is memeing with Brad Marchand at the gold medal ceremony. Travis Sanheim stands out for maybe not the best reasons. Again, we'll dive into all of that kind of a little later on in the show. But you have all these eyes on the team. There is a little bit of that, ooh, the Eagles won, now what's next? And a lot of Philadelphia sports fans jumped on the Philadelphia sports bandwagon when it came to the Eagles, right? When it became clear that the Eagles were rolling, the city piled on, and they win. There's the parade. It's amazing. And then all that energy has nowhere to go. And you look to the Wells Fargo Center,
right?
And Sixers tickets are $3.
Yeah.
And then you look across,
the same night as the whatever it was, the same night as the championship game of Four Nations, the Sixers were playing the Celtics, and I was with my buddy who is a Boston fan, who told me originally he was possibly going to go to that game because it's the Celtics, and the tickets were like between $10 and $15, and that is only because it was the Celtics, probably.
Almost guaranteed. It was
right.
A lot of Boston
fans hey,
going,
that's one of the premier teams in the NBA. So if you really want to see them, we're going to upcharge you $5 more than you would have had to pay on the secondary market already.
Right. Well, and every Celtics fan within 2 hours goes, ooh, $10 tickets, I'm in.
I know, it's crazy. And it didn't help matters either that also the weekend before was the NBA All-Star break and weekend and all that stuff. And it pales in comparison to what you were getting from the other sport at the time. So all of a sudden, everybody's eyes are on, look at this thing. Look at what's going on over here. This is supposed to be the All-Star break.
Well, and it turns out, and again, our Four Nations discussion is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But it turns out when the best players in the world have something to play for, it's really high-level hockey.
When the best players in the world care.
Hockey. Yes.
Like quite literally, just that's all that mattered was when they care.
And all you got to do, and obviously it took the NHL 9 years to figure it out, all you got to do is put the country on the sweater. That's all it takes. That's all it takes.
The thing is that they've done stuff like this before in an all-star format, though, too. They did U.S. World, and it
was North America World.
Well,
it
was
North America World.
Even so, it's too friendly. You've got to make it a competition thing, and not the 3-on-3 competition. It's got to have a little more weight to it. Why do you think, like, we did the same thing, and even then, it wasn't necessarily putting the country on the sweater per se, because they made up 2 teams to do it. But the World Cup last time had that intensity because, why? Because you had a team that was made up, that was the 23 and under team, that was basically you're almost as if to say you're not old enough to play for US or Canada. So they go out and play like gangbusters because they want to show, you should put age. That's what you're differentiating this team by. Put us on Team USA or Team Canada. We're still the best players in the league.
Well, and I think that goes to my point, and that's the difference. That was the difference with the All-Star game. It wasn't U.S., it was North America, right? You didn't have the Stars and Stripes. You didn't have the Maple Leaf. You weren't playing for the Crest.
Right. Now, see, it's different in many, it's still different in many ways, because when you take that thing for the World Cup side of it, there's something to play for. And like I said, I think that was a prove it thing for guys who are of a certain age that don't get to play for the other teams like that. You at least dangled it in front of them. Like, here's those teams. Here's the name of the country or the crest or whatever you want to go with it. Here it is right in front of you, but you're not on that team.
You're
versus Sean, US or North America World. That's North America World, and it's just a friendly back and forth.
Right. Like you're telling me Sean Couturier wasn't going to be on the 2018 Olympic Canada team if they went?
Yeah, that time probably. Absolutely.
Come on.
For that matter, so was another Flyer. Claude Giroux would have been on that team too, probably.
Probably.
In 2018?
Yeah. He was pretty good that year, if I recall correctly.
Like that finally hit me at some point in the process of that tournament, was that, a guy like that is at, whether it's the stage of his career, the numbers that he puts up, or just the fact that now he's got 3 kids or whatever it is, and it's like, I don't need to do this. I'm gonna go home. Like maybe there's an element of that too, because otherwise, like,
or it might just be because his car keeps getting stolen.
Well, that too. Jeez. What an awful story.
Listen, Claude Giroux versus car thieves might be the funniest story coming out of Ontario.
So, all right. So before we get to the Four Nations stuff, we should probably just go with where we picked up where we left off. Which isn't very much. It's one game, but still.
But listen, what a game it is. So, spoiler alert: Four Nations happened, and we heard coming out of Four Nations that Connor McDavid was flying back with the team, with Travis Sanheim, with Travis Konechny, with Sam Ersson, et cetera. Ersson might have gone home earlier, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, Ersson was already back after the last game when Sweden didn't make it. And John Tortorella said today that he drove back, didn't fly back, so he was not on that either.
Which is just the most John Tortorella thing, and it's hilarious.
Well, we'll who knows, what exactly the story is at this point, because it's all over the place. I know. See, the problem is that everybody already ran with the part that everybody was going to run with. It was out there for however long, and then it was gone, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder why. But you get the point. Anyway.
I do have to say, in John's defense, though, Boston to Philadelphia is a gorgeous drive. I've done it a couple of times. I know you did it not too long ago yourself.
No, I didn't. Well, I didn't. No, I didn't drive that one. I flew.
You flew out, didn't you? Okay. Well, regardless, the drive is pretty nice. I understand where John's coming from. I certainly hope he didn't go through New York City, but I assume he knows better.
You really believe that John Tortorella is the type of person who minds being in a car by himself? Like, leave me the hell alone.
What's on the radio? Is it Chapel Roan? Is John Tortorella a member of the Pink Pony Club?
It's on the radio. He's probably listening to motivational podcasts.
I would like to think that he's
spoken word
listening. I would like to think that he subscribes and is listening to you with things. John. It's nice to speak with you. I have tried my best to defend you. I think you're doing a fantastic job with this team. Rewinding back to my point about where the city's kind of sports energy is.
Yes.
You look at the Sixers, and it's not very exciting. You look at the Phillies, and there wasn't a whole lot of change over the offseason that maybe people were kind of expecting.
People are lukewarm on it because nothing happened, and they bowed out really early in the playoffs last year, yes.
And then you have the Flyers. You have Matvei Michkov. You have, as we found out, you had a whole slew of returning players for this game against the Oilers.
Yeah, the 2 weeks helped a lot.
Including Owen, Tippett, and Ryan Poehling.
It was Tippett, Poehling, Ristolainen, and there's one more in there, Zamula,
I'm sorry.
So they had 4. Well, so they had 4 players back from injury. Jacob Pelletier made his debut. That was a 5th. You might as well, I know it wasn't his first game, but you might as well consider it Andrei Kuzmenko's first game again, because it's like, oh, by the way, that guy who played 1 game 2 weeks ago, he's still here, in case you forgot about that.
Right. And in case we
didn't, that's a third of your roster. That's different.
In case we didn't do a good enough job emphasizing it on the last show, the Flyers really did kind of limp into this break. There were obviously a lot of guys who were banged up with stuff. Yeah. There was a lot of guys who were out of the lineup. And we'll get into kind of the bigger playoffs conversation as we get a little bit further in the show. And I'm not necessarily beating that drum.
Right.
What I mentioned to you as a joke before the show, that the Eastern Conference is tight enough that if the Flyers have a hot 2 weeks, we might have a conversation here.
Yeah, and I know that that's true, and that again, that just goes back to
whether we should be or not.
Well, it goes back to the point that I've been beating like a dead horse for the last, however long, about how all of these teams are mired in mediocrity, and someone who's not very good is going to make the playoffs, but
why not us? But regardless,
well, the reason why not is because of the number of teams that technically are in front of you. Like,
I know,
I'd rather be Columbus than be Philadelphia at this point, looking at the standings.
But Kevin, don't all those teams suck?
Well, no. Well, sure, but they're all on a level playing field of it, though. So anybody, that one wins more games than the other. Well, you know what else it is too? Pull from within those teams.
Boston is pulling the plug. They're out.
They should, honestly, but that's a different. Well, Boston should pull the plug because now Charlie McAvoy's out for a long period of time.
You ready for this?
Go ahead.
Brad Marchand is going to be an incredible Los Angeles King.
You know, I don't hate it.
Tell me.
I thought you were going to pull. I thought you were going to pull a card that I don't know how you were going to pull it because I can't figure out in my head.
Is it Marchand and Crosby to Colorado?
No, it was. I can't.
That would be insane.
No, because I listen. I wasn't going to figure out. I wasn't trying to figure out the money part of it. There's probably no way it works money wise. Just thinking of it off the top of my head. But I thought for sure you were about to sit there and say Marchand Toronto.
Oh, they could make that work easy. Oh, they could
with the money
easy. Absolutely. They retain half at the deadline. How much is it?
Well, if Boston retains, that's a fair point.
He's expiring.
He's expiring. That's true.
And they've been accruing cap space all season. Boston could absolutely make that work.
Oh, Boston could. Boston could. I'm even saying if
I'm saying Toronto could absolutely make that work.
Okay, I was going to say I know Boston can make it work. Okay, and Boston's fair. Okay, but see, so pull, if you will, pull from some of those teams. The
people in Toronto asking for Cousins, so like
it's true. Pull from some of those teams, if you will, like because you're saying like don't all these teams suck? Because I've said that plenty of times. Pull from some of these teams though, like for example, one of the games I had on after the Flyers game on Saturday was Columbus Chicago. If I didn't need any more ammunition for this point, but I got plenty of it in that game. To give Zach Werenski the Norris, please.
Oh, 1,000%. And like,
if you've got if you've got the guy who, without question, at least to me anymore, without question, is probably the best defenseman in the league this year, should win that trophy. You have a better case of making the playoffs than somebody who doesn't.
By the way, I assume voters will only be taking the 82 NHL games into account.
They will. Yeah.
6 assists and 4 Nations games for Zach Werenski.
Exactly.
He's a mutant.
He's outstanding. What a great player.
I assume he's been steroid tested at least 4 times. He has to be, because the dude is a mutant.
He's been great,
almost as much of a mutant as Alexander Ovechkin. 13.
Doesn't it make you feel? Doesn't it make it feel a little worse too that Werenski's had at least 2, maybe 3 like serious injuries, and it probably delayed this from happening? Like, he clearly always had it in him to be one of the best defensemen in the league. It was just he'd be out with a long-term injury. He'd be out for months on end.
You heard the rumors of the Seth Jarvis reunion in Columbus?
Oh, Seth Jones, you mean?
Or Seth Jones, I mean, not Seth Jarvis.
Yeah, I know. He said he would do it. He said he would do it. Like Werenski said he would do it.
I'm sure he would. I'm sure he would. He had, before this season, he had some of his most successful seasons with Seth Jones.
Well, sure.
A
lot's changed, though.
Sure. And I mean, Columbus is probably one of the best fits in the league as far as eating that contract.
And look, one of the things I know right off the top, I know from a Flyers perspective, them missing the playoffs is better than them making the playoffs. But I think everybody wants that story to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Given Columbus everything else, incredible to put them in the playoffs. Yeah,
that first game at Nationwide would be
they just got some help back too, because Boone Jenner played for the first time on Saturday, so that was a huge deal. You know,
if the Flyers end up not making the playoffs, it is very likely because Columbus holds that spot. I think
there are 2 teams that are sitting there right now that maybe even based on 4 nations, because each team that I'm going to mention has a player that I think we all watch that we would want to see more of in a playoff series anyway. There are pretty clear-cut 2 teams I think that I would love to see make the wild card based on all the way it is. I would say Columbus is one of them, obviously, because I said the story would be great, and Werenski deserves to have a shot at that. And I think if Ottawa made it, because come on, Brady Tkachuk needs playoff games.
And listen, I do just have to say, if Columbus sneaks into the playoffs and they play Toronto in the first round,
Oh,
because they beat them in the bubble to keep them out of the 2020 playoffs. And oh man, I know they don't have Sergei Bobrovsky anymore, but
yeah, I was gonna say the goaltending would be the one thing that would hold me up with them.
But come on,
and I don't think Merzlikins is bad. It's just it's not Bobrovsky, and you know it. Then again, though, I don't know. Like, I know what Toronto's bringing into it from a goalie standpoint. I don't know how that's going to work in the playoffs versus regular season. It's been fine in the regular season, but the playoffs, you can have how many years did Bobrovsky look great in the regular season? And then the playoffs showed up, and it was like, oh yeah, that guy.
Right? Are you getting? Yeah, but
like, well, it's are you getting Joseph Woll playing like the brick wall?
Well,
or
there
Anthony
is
Stolarz.
Also, I was about to say, there is also Anthony Stolarz.
Absolute or both, legend. Depending on how that series goes, or any series that they play in.
If Anthony Stolarz is the goalie to deliver the Toronto Maple Leafs beyond the first, oh man, just another one that got away. Just joins the long,
don't
long
even
list.
With that. Please don't even start with
the
that.
The Philadelphia Flyers goalie graveyard. Maybe we'll do a segment about that this summer.
Well, then by that logic, forget Ottawa and Detroit makes the playoffs, and Alex Lyon and Cam Talbot are gonna tag team it to the conference final or something, right?
Cam Talbot doesn't count, but listen,
it doesn't matter. He played.
If you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, you know, and this remains true to this day, you know that I loved Anthony Stolarz when he was here, but I loved me some Alex Lyon when he was here. I love Alex Lyon.
Okay, and listen, you can say Cam Talbot doesn't count. Cam Talbot counts as much to me as Cal Pickard counts, as much as you No, you know why? Because I had to sit through it. I've covered games watching that level of goaltending.
Yeah, what's Michael Leighton up to these days? He's probably still in the AHL somewhere, putting up 58 saves.
Yeah, that's another name that we just keep pulling up. I threw that name into the group chat while we were watching Four Nations.
Yep. Michael Leighton's a good one, but
yeah.
Okay, so let's get into this actual game. The Edmonton Oilers came to town. Like I said, Connor McDavid flew in with the rest of the Team Canada Flyers. And they played a hockey game, or at least the Flyers did for the first part of it. Matvei Michkov.
Yeah.
Is he good? Hey, I'm just gonna take a second. You ready?
Yep.
Kevin, roughly.
Yes.
I don't need an exact number here, but roughly.
Yes.
For this season, what's the most number of games that Matvei Michkov played in a season?
The most that he's played in a season?
Yeah, roughly. In the mid-50s. 60s with playoffs.
I was even going to say lower than that. I thought it was like between 48 and 55 or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, I was kind of,
No, I get you.
Do you think his head coach knew that?
I would hope so.
Do you think John looked at his stat sheet and saw that he had only played that many games over the last? Okay, so when he scratched him earlier in the season,
the reason why I'm
back and looked really good.
The reason why I'm laughing is because Torts didn't look that up or know that, but he had somebody tell him that.
You know what I mean.
I know. I'm playing. I'm just playing.
I wouldn't be surprised if somebody put the stat sheet in front of him at some point and said,
"No," but I mean, yeah, you know who? Danny Briere.
And probably, and said, "Hey, we're picking this kid. Make it work."
Well, not even that. It goes beyond picking him. He's here. Manage him properly, and you know what? Like, you needed this though, because scratching him feels like the problem with scratching him, even if it's calculated, even if it's for a break, it feels like punishment, because that's the way everybody takes a scratching. It's a benching. You sit down and you don't get to play. Why don't you get to play? Because you didn't play well enough before. That's all there is to it. You get a natural built break into the schedule, and I can only assume, I believe that was his first shift of the game. And I could tell from the second that he won the race to the loose puck and scored on his own rebound that it seemed like, at least from first glance, I think Owen Tippett had a better chance of getting to it first than he did at the beginning, and he got there anyway. And I kind of knew from right then and there. And what the thing is that I don't know whether or not we know that players are wired a certain way. I don't know if this has to do with the same way that we looked and went, holy smokes, look at the way he played against the Capitals the other game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because the guy on the other side has a little something to do with that you're a little extra amped up because that guy's over there. Is it possible that Connor McDavid, Canada's new golden boy, is over there and you go, I want to be like the best player in the world?
Well, and listen, as a lifelong Philadelphia fan who has watched this team play every Philadelphia sports team, let's be completely honest, because I watched Andy Reid's Eagles do it for a decade too, play down to the level of their competition.
Sure.
The fact that you have a kid who, when the best players in the world are on the ice,
wants to play up.
He wants to prove he's with them.
Yeah.
That's exciting. And I don't know if there has been a decision made as far as Olympic athletes from Russia for next year's Olympics. But if there's a team, I'm excited to see what he's going to do on it.
I can't envision there not being with the other guy that we've been talking about that would be the headliner of that team.
Who's about to become the greatest goal scorer of all time.
Yeah.
Casually, Alex Ovechkin 13 away after a hat trick. Hello. The team scores 8 goals on Saturday, and he somehow has none of them. And then on Sunday, he's like, you know what? 3, just for me.
I was about to say, how about that team scoring 15 goals in 2 games coming out of a break?
I
know they didn't send a lot of guys. That's why.
I was about to say, what is the reputation the Washington Capitals have had for a decade and a half? It's all Russians, man. And I know Kuznetsov and Backstrom aren't there anymore. I know.
Right. I was going to say, it's gone down a lot, actually. Like, if nothing else, you had people looking at the teams going, why is this guy not around again? Like, they had candidates.
No.
So I don't know what it is, but that's it. Like, they've got so much in terms of, I don't want to say so much because like they don't have the Hart Trophy winner or anything like that. They're not going to have that guy. Spencer Carberry is a shoo-in for Jack Adams, though, right? Like, we don't even have to have that conversation. So that's 2 so far, and we weren't planning to do that, but like that's 2 award watches for you.
It turns out the Matvei called their watches on thin ice, but it's okay. That's a story for another show.
You say that, but he scored a goal, and right away everybody's pointing out, well, he's tied for the goal lead again.
Absolutely, but
and maybe if this is only the first game of a bunch of really good ones in a row, I mean, the kid gets 2 weeks off and then comes back and puts up 3 points right away, like it's nothing.
Absolutely.
With only the best player in the world on the other side.
I was going to say, I think the theme for this Saturday game was guys getting shot out of a cannon. Right? You have Matvei Michkov shot out of a cannon right away. Obviously, Russia didn't go. A little later on, Leon Draisaitl scores. Germany, they'll be at the Olympics.
Yeah, I think Draisaitl's just been doing it all year, though, so I don't take that for anything.
Of course, he's just a monster. The flyer that I think looked the most shot out of a cannon in this
Owen
game,
Tippett.
You already mentioned him on this Matvei Michkov goal.
Yeah,
Owen Tippett played his ass off in this hockey game.
Owen Tippett, I got to give it to me anyway. That first goal he scored is the goal of the year so far.
It's up there, man.
I mean, that's you got to realize. And I talk all
in a row for this team.
Yeah, well, I talk about it all the time. My vantage point. This is right in front of me. I saw the top of the net pop, and you're just going, "Oh man, what a shot!" Wins the race, lifts a backhander. You know, he's the thing is that, and then when he scored his second one, I actually put out there on social. Michkov's at 3 points. Tippett scored 2 goals. They're both setting each other up. I know there's a lot of other stuff that needs to happen before this is a finished product of a team. That's 2 of your future. That's 2 pieces of your future at forward right there.
And probably 2 pieces of your power play.
Should be, yeah.
And probably. Theoretically, you get to the point where you have 2 incredible units. they're both on there at some point.
Well,
They could both be PP1 guys for
and
a
interestingly enough, and I know that people don't expect this to last. He's had games like this before, and then it doesn't happen for a while. But performances like that from Michkov and Tippett can all of a sudden make Sean Couturier look like 2017, 2018 Sean Couturier again.
And we have seen some glimpses of that. And obviously, he's still kind of on the road back from missing most of 2 years. But as we sit here today, Sean Couturier is fine. Now, I think Danny Bears talked about it. I think his biggest goal, not necessarily by the trade deadline, but through the offseason, is going to be to acquire an elite center. And if you can put, I think he's going to try. I don't know how many are out there. I don't know if
right. I was going to say your definition of elite might need to change a little bit or be altered a little, but he's going to try to get a bigger name for sure.
I understand, and even if I'm willing to put the reputation of Elias Pettersson on the borderline of elite. I'm not saying he's there right now. He has flirted with that in the past, and I think he could get back there. So if he is the guy that comes in, I think he could be an elite 1C.
Well, let me ask you this. If you were going into the free agent market for a center, who are you looking at that you would consider elite?
Let me take a look because
I just want to see if you come away with anybody who I can give you maybe just like a little bit of like yeah, you're on the right track. No, you're not. Like in terms of where I think their interest may lie. Because personally to me, and while you're looking at the names, I'll give you like an idea here of this.
I'm joking, but John Tavares.
Well, no. So like, okay, but this is my point. John Tavares, right? That's the headliner of the UFA center market. I don't think it's a very good UFA center market because
no, I agree.
Then you're following it up with like the next best names beyond Tavares because Backstrom's pretty well done at this point.
For some reason, Wikipedia has Mikko Rantanen listed as a center. He's not a center.
No, he's played wing more. No, I was going to say
it has Claude Giroux listed as a center. He's not a center.
Your next best centers, then, at least to me, are your borderline like Yanni Gourde, Sam Bennett.
Yeah, no, Sam Bennett.
I don't think Sam Bennett would want to play for this team, to be honest. I think Sam Bennett's like, I actually, looking at this list, do you know exactly where I think Sam Bennett ends up next year?
In Florida?
Well, that's sure. That I think would be the first target. All right. If he walks, now pick. If he walks, where do you think he ends up?
Boston.
Yup.
He's a Boston Bruin.
Yup. 1,000%.
Yep. And they're gonna need him. It depends on how much they're tearing it down, right? If they're thinking about trading David Pastrnak, which is insane, by the way, don't do that.
Right.
But if they're thinking about trading David Pastrnak, don't sign Sam Bennett. That's for sure.
But but see, here's the thing. So as you go through the UFA list, ask yourself, like, all right, so like, what's with a free agent? What's your cutoff? What's the point where you sit there and say that's too old for what they're building?
Well, and I think, and this is something that I mentioned, I think on the last show. Again, it's been a couple of weeks.
Right.
5 picks in the first 2 rounds. 6 picks. They have a lot of picks in the
7 picks in the first 2 rounds of this draft.
7 picks in the first 3 rounds. Yeah. I don't think you're acquiring a center via free agency.
Okay.
I think the plan, and again, I don't know if you're going to be able to do this. I don't know how many elite centermen are available. I think the plan is to try to make a move at the draft. Maybe it's Dylan Cousins. Maybe
now hang on, because I want you to pump the brakes on that conversation for a second. Because when you were looking at a list, all the guys like Tavares, Yanni Gourde, Mikael Granlund, Christian Dvorak, Sam Bennett, Robbie Fabry, Alex Kerfoot. Like, what do all these guys have in common? Age, roughly.
Yeah, they're all. You're
pushing 30, or you're already 30. There. Like, Why would the Flyers sign Mikael Granlund, 33 years old? Why would you do that? Why would you sign Yanni Gourde, 33, going on 34? Why would you sign, honestly, why would you even commit a long-term deal to a guy like Robbie Fabry at 29? That's ridiculous.
Robbie Fabry is about the only one, but again, I don't think he's a high enough quality player that at that point it's worth it for this team.
Sure. Now,
like if you were signing Robbie Fabry to be your 3C, different
closer to completed project, right? But you're not there.
Right.
All right.
Exactly.
You know what else all those guys have in common?
Okay.
Every player I just mentioned is a UFA.
Well, yeah, of course. That's what I was looking at. Yeah.
So how about I go over to some of the RFAs?
Yeah. There's not a ton of them, to be honest.
No, but there's probably, I would say there's 3 or 4 that I would circle. Just keep your eyes on those names because they're all going to fit the right thing.
Morgan Frost.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I think you could pretty easily figure it out.
I mean, I don't know exactly who you're talking about, but I do like Philip Kurashev. Like I think he's probably pretty likely to stay in Chicago, but if he doesn't,
no. But like what I'm saying is that shoot higher, okay? Like shoot a little higher for somebody who's got a little bit more experience, a little bit more of a resume.
Is it a one market Gabe Vilardi?
Yes, that's one.
Is that okay? Yeah, I like Vilardi
well,
too.
Here's the thing.
I do.
I'm just saying Vilardi is 25 going on 26.
Yep.
He's having a career year, so he's going to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
And he's playing for a team that just shelled out a bunch of money to lock down the goalie and the other center. And a winger.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about the offer sheet thing, and I know I think that is a possibility as well. Quite frankly, I have no inside knowledge on this. This is certainly not a report. This is a vibe.
Okay.
I feel like Danny's gonna try to be aggressive.
What on the offer sheet market?
I think you're gonna see an offer sheet. I think you might still see a trade, and then maybe a free agent, a decent sized free agent.
Well, especially because
to kind of round
especially because this year's draft picks don't affect that.
Exactly.
So you still got the 7 picks in the first 2 rounds, whether you plan to offer sheet somebody or not. So yeah, if you want to take a shot, take a shot. I'll tell you right now.
Package 3, 4, 5 of those picks and make 2 big deals if you really want to.
I'll tell you right now. Keep an eye on the following names. I already mentioned Vilardi, obviously, and the reason I'm mentioning Vilardi is because that feels like the perfect storm of everything that could check out with an offer sheet. He's having a really big year, so he's going to go and get a pay increase. You're going to have money. Winnipeg is not going to have as much money. He's a center. He's 25, 26 years old. He's right in that window. Why wouldn't you consider that? Obviously.
Yep.
Mason McTavish. The problem with Mason McTavish is Anaheim's going to have money, so that's a better chance of matching.
See, I think that's a draft day deal. That's more.
You think that would need to be a sign and trade type of thing?
I think that's a yes.
Fair enough. And if it works out that way, it works out that way. I don't get the sense that they want to let him go is the point. So you can try every which way you want to. I think he's staying in Anaheim.
That's fair.
That's another one. Marco Rossi. Same situation, I would say. Probably
Minnesota's going to have a little more money.
Right, that's what I mean. Same situation as McTavish. Minnesota's probably got the means to match that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they also have to be really careful in Minnesota.
Sure.
You think Kaprizov up after next year?
I'd have to check that formally because I'm on the list of free agents, not on the total free agents, not the.
I can grab that, but I believe Kaprizov only has 1 year left, and if that's the case, then they need to be very careful, and it's time to. Yeah, he is in year 4 or 5 right now, so he is up after next season. So they gotta be doing some long-term projecting in Minnesota. Listen, you want to get crazy? What if they can't sign Kaprizov and they put him on the market?
Well, put him on the market is a whole nother animal too. I was more or less thinking, what if he hits the market next year?
Well, I mean, that's also the case, but
you know what I'm saying, though, right?
And he would be a UFA too. Yeah,
exactly.
man.
And well,
Yeah,
and right away.
I do know what you're saying.
The only downside with that, by the way, is he's not a center.
Yeah.
So you're moving more wingers, probably, right?
Listen, if you're talking about bringing in Kaprizov, somebody's got to go. And
Sure.
somebody probably reasonably large, maybe a Konechny, maybe a Tippett, maybe like somebody towards the top of the lineup would probably have to move out.
Right. By the way, so there's one more name I'll give you from the center group, if you will.
Okay.
That is RFA offer sheet material potentially.
Right.
Wyatt Johnston.
Oh my goodness, that might be a fever dream.
And the only thing I have doubts on there is one, Dallas has a lot of pending free agents. So there's money available to match. Like you pick him. It's not even about flexibility. The point would be you probably pick Wyatt Johnston over, at the very least, over Dadonov and Duchesne.
Absolutely.
And Granlund for that matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't Granlund just go and Stankoven just takes right over?
Absolutely. Dallas
and you still have all of your favorites. Still have Rope Hintz. Still have Jamie Benn. Well, and Jamie Benn's a winger anyway.
Miro Heiskanen.
Well, I'm not factoring defensemen into it, but isn't that the way it's probably going to be? That your centers are Hintz, Johnston, Stankoven, and then take your pick between Maverick Bourque and Tyler Seguin.
I was gonna say Tyler Seguin comes back at some point.
This is for next year by that point. So yeah, of course he comes back.
Yeah.
Sam Steele's listed as a center. Maybe it's him. Didn't they just re-up him?
Is that Jim Nill in Dallas?
I believe so. Yes.
Man, he does such a good job.
Don't you love? Yeah, I was gonna say, don't you love? Isn't it? Don't you love having competent people running franchises?
What's that like? Holy smokes! Again, I do think Danny is going to be aggressive. There has been scuttlebutt, and again, it's scuttlebutt about trying to be competitive next year and blah blah blah, starting to kind of get the ticket drive. None of that, none of that's confirmed, obviously. But if the team is looking to take a step forward and put a competitive roster on the ice next year with intentions on making the playoffs and starting to put something together, Danny's going to have to make moves multiple.
Oh yeah,
at least one center, preferably two, frankly, if you can.
The thing with the 1 to 2 centers though is that's why I keep floating around with this thing of what level do you consider this somewhat solved, if you will, with a Velarde or a Johnston or a Rossi or whatever, insert player you could shoot for here, McTavish, whatever, right? You go to offer sheet a guy. Maybe you win it. Maybe you get the player. It certainly solves your problem temporarily in terms of that guy is automatically your number one, no question, because he's better than everything you've got. But
absolutely,
is he your number one, or is he long-term number two? There's got to be something else that follows this eventually.
Yes.
Which brings you to the
2026.
No, the 2026 free agent class.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say to the rest of this season, and
also that because maybe your other part of it is the draft
Michael
pick.
Misa. Right.
Yes. Yep. Well, let's put it this way: where do you where do you eventually slot Jetlachenko in?
Mm-hmm.
2, 3.
Yep. Does
that's
Denver
to be determined.
As a 3 or 4 down the road? Yeah. There's a lot to be discussed here.
Obviously, why I brought up 2026.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot.
Listen, is it a pipe dream? Of course, it's a pipe dream. But isn't that also what this team has always been? Is
absolutely
go big fishing, right? Go for the big fish.
Ed would be proud.
Well, right. If that's the case, if that's what the whole money thing is, which also leads you to what do you not what do you do, but kind of what do you do about this center position to begin with? Because to your point, we could be talking offer sheets, or we could be talking about a top 5 draft pick who kind of almost slots in, maybe not next year, but the year after.
And listen, if you spike and get a number one, maybe this year, who knows?
Well, if it's Hagens, then probably
he probably steps right in. And regardless,
I'm a little hesitant on Misa. Like if it's Misa, I think he's getting a year back wherever,
and then we'll
talk.
Treatment.
Yeah, and then we'll talk.
Treatment.
Yeah, and then we'll talk. I think Lachenko's probably here next year, don't you?
I agree.
Probably.
I think he's in the lineup in a hefty pencil. It's not penned yet, but it's pretty close.
Anyway,
okay. In the interest of brevity here, we do have Four Nations to discuss here. A little bit of a scheduling note as we're kind of shifting topics here. We are shifting to a Monday night release. I know we've been Sunday morning for a very long time.
Monday night, Tuesday morning release, with recording on Monday, probably.
Of course. And that is at least through the end of the season and kind of moving forward here. We all have some family stuff going on, and we're just shifting a little bit schedule wise. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe everywhere. We always post on Twitter /X/Blue Sky everywhere. When new episodes do come out, we're at YWT Podcast everywhere. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso. Blue Sky is at Kevin Durso. Okay, so I did want to shift topics here because the hockey world, right? We had one Flyers game to talk about, and we skimmed over that a little bit. The Flyers kicked the Oilers' ass. TLDR.
In particular, that one line did a lot of damage. And for what it's worth, too, those 3 players were +5 in the game, and Connor McDavid was a -3.
So there you go, Sean Couturier, Owen Tippett, Matvei, Michkov.
Well, somewhere halfway
times better than Connor McDavid.
Well, somewhere halfway through the game, maybe it was into the third period, but it kind of hit me. I feel like I haven't seen this guy. I notice him, but I don't feel like I've noticed him to the level that I typically notice him. Draisaitl, I noticed plenty.
Well, it turns out Leon Draisaitl spent a week and a half. I don't know where he was, but I assume he was in Cancun sipping daiquiris. And Connor McDavid was playing hardcore, intense playoff style hockey for 4 games. Well, 2.5 games. The Four Nations tournament was the first international tournament thrown by the NHL, including NHL players at the highest level, World Championships aside, since 2016 with the World Cup of Hockey featuring Team Some of Europe, Team North America. You remember the tournament. Shane Gostisbehere with the sick upside down black and orange triangle. You know the jersey. It was the first international tournament since then. We kicked off with how most international hockey tournaments kick off. Canada kicking somebody's ass. This time it was Finland. I'm sorry, they played Sweden first, and that was an overtime game. That one was a lot of fun. The U.S. played Finland, and those were kind of the preliminary matchups. Those were the midweek matchups. It treated almost like preseason games, right? It felt like they were working systems out and getting line combinations. To some extent, obviously they
didn't have the juice. Canada, I get Sweden. That it was. I mean, it was still competitive, but it was
we were
not
setting the table.
Well, we knew that. Everybody knew what game everybody wanted to see. It was,
U.S.
The Canada, fact of the matter was, you watched 3 out of 6 games that were part of the round robin that just didn't Canada, Sweden delivered a little bit because it went to overtime, but it didn't have the juice. And then you have the other 2 that led up to it. Again, another one was an overtime game, and the Sweden-Finland kind of little rivalry is also part of that. There's a little, so that goes to overtime. That's a big deal. But it had not it was nothing for what was coming on that Saturday night of the first week.
And we all know, right? I alluded to it on our last show. It was Canada's Flag Day. It was a politically charged environment. It was a fired up Bell Center. That was probably the most anticipated. Okay, it was definitely the most anticipated hockey game since the Stanley Cup final. It might have been the most anticipated hockey game in several years.
probably since, I don't know if it would go, but I don't know if I would go as far back as 2010 with another gold medal game. Probably,
Close.
I mean, it's probably the most, I mean, for that, it's the most anticipated international game since then. Absolutely.
Certainly.
In terms of games themselves, I mean, depends on what you want to consider most anticipated. I mean, for a little while there, you had Battle of Alberta games that were highly anticipated because it was on a completely different level. I'm sure that, you know, there were like little moments in between that definitely had that, like from the NHL perspective. But yeah, I mean, this was highly anticipated. There was all that other stuff with it. You know, which by the way, since you've brought it up, because I know it's normally a question that you like to ask of me being present at things. You know, for the first time Saturday, it was the first time in a long time we had a 2-anthem game. And it was so uneventful, it wasn't worth even putting anything out there about it. There was like one guy who tried to get something going during the Canadian anthem. It never took off. It was exactly the way it's been every other time I've experienced the Canadian anthem, and the exact same way I've experienced the U.S. anthem.
You know why that's the case?
Why?
Lauren Hart sings both anthems.
Interesting. I mean, I'm sure
that's it.
That's it. All right.
She won't get booed.
But it's not. See, I don't take it as the person singing it getting booed. It's booing the, you know.
I understand. No, listen. I understand why people are booing or not booing, or what anthems were booing and why.
I just am willing to admit that I was very surprised that was the case. I expected a little something, and it turned out to be a giant nothing burger of a situation. It was just like it always is.
I think a situation where Party A boos Party B. The Party B booing Party A is always going to be a little weaker because it is that retaliatory. It's not really the same thing. And then when you add in that layer of respect that Lauren Hart has, I think that just kind of quashes it.
Hopefully, whatever the reason, I was just surprised. And I'm
regardless, right? And we are going to move on from that swiftly.
Oh, absolutely.
But
no, but like, okay, but to your point, because you're on the Saturday game between those two nations.
Yes, as far as the hockey game goes.
And I understand the point of Matthew Tkachuk and Brandon Hagel. I understand the point of Brady Tkachuk and Sam Bennett. I understood that. You want to set a tone. You want to feed into what the crowd's playing into. Be my guest. We got to the third one, and I was done with that situation.
Well, and here's
First of all, it's a mismatch. JT Miller and Colton Parayko was a huge mismatch.
Well, and frankly, I think Canada needed a mismatch because the Tkachuk brothers were both much larger than their dance partners.
Mm-hmm.
But I was listening to Dangle podcast talking about it on their post game, you know, the episode they put out post that game, and they mentioned that if it was just Brady and Matthew,
right,
it's the Tkachuk brothers fighting Team Canada, but by JT Miller bringing in two, now it's Team USA. And it's that unifying, like it's more than just the brothers, like another guy jumped in it too. And again, I'm not saying it's perfect logic, but you bring somebody else in, it's not just the Bash brothers, it's the Bash brothers and Kenny Wu. And it kind of brings the whole team together.
Maybe so. I don't know. I didn't like it because of the fact that, okay, the other two are very staged. Let's face it. It's off the face off. They talked about it. You know what's going on.
Yeah, they
to then do it. To then do it after the first whistle in the crease and like let it, you know, now we're 9 seconds in. My point by that point is that's enough of this. Like the point has been proven. I don't care. And I don't care who it was on the other side to that point about, well, then it's the Tkachuk. I don't care. That's your leaders. Everybody knows that's your leaders. They're shown every single time. They were the two best players on the roster. You know, of course you want to do it. And eventually you get to a point also where it's like, kind of stop screwing over your team and taking yourself off the ice for 5 minutes.
Yeah, but if you're gonna do it, right away isn't a bad time. Everyone's nice and fresh.
I'm sorry. I look at the 3 guys that went off for US, and I don't even put JT Miller's way further down the list.
You're taking that trade. If you're Team Canada,
oh
you're
yeah,
taking
that's
that
my
trade
point.
every day of the week.
I want Brandon Hagel and Sam Bennett and Colton Parayko off the ice, not because I don't think they're good. It's because I'll take them off the ice if it means taking the Tkachuk brothers off the ice. Yeah, absolutely, every single time. So at some point, stop that. Yeah, so at some point, stop that, because then Connor McDavid's going to do what Connor McDavid did to score the first goal and be Connor McDavid.
And to their credit, they did. Right after that, the game was physical. The game was hard hitting. The game had a playoff atmosphere, even in a round robin game. But there weren't any more fights. There was no more.
Right, they did finally put it to bed. But I was
so
like, if it went any further, like you also don't.
I mean, it borderline circus if it goes any further.
Well, because at some point in time, there's doing all of that when the game is out of hand and over, like Flyers, Senators. No, but like Flyers, Senators, where it's like, all right, fine, under 5 minutes, 3-goal game, sure, let's do this.
Here's Donald Berthier, let's go.
Right, let's do this. Fine, you want to settle scores, settle scores. It's 9 seconds into the game. I don't know, maybe be beating them on the scoreboard a little more before you get back into that frame of mind.
Yeah, it's
like and again, the first couple, you've made your point. Do we need a third one before we end up seeing, get on the board first?
Listen, I agree, and I'm certainly not in the business of defending.
And listen, everything from there, love the play of Charlie McAvoy after that. Go be physical, please.
Absolutely.
McAvoy, Brady Tkachuk laying a hit on Drew Doughty like that.
Man,
please
that
be
hit
physical.
Was crazy. That felt like a conference final hit.
Right.
Like
now, that stuff I love.
Love
it. Textbook clean hitting across the board. We took all that other stuff out of play after that point.
And that's all we saw the rest of the game, the remaining 59 minutes and 51 seconds.
Yes.
And that's all we saw in the championship game, which, spoiler alert, was a rematch between those two teams as well. That's all we saw in that game.
Could have told you that one, regardless of who was going to win that game on the first one on Saturday, could have told you that was coming, 20 minutes into that game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, of course, what we got. And it was another great hockey game. Obviously the championship game this time around, Canada ends up coming out on top. Marner to McDavid.
I do not know for the life of me in that game, in that situation, how you lose Connor McDavid in coverage.
Yeah. And I saw some
three guys make brutal mistakes all at the same time to leave that space. Adam Fox behind the net. Austin Matthews drifts too far. Jack Hughes, I don't know what he was doing on the boards. 3 guys.
As far as I'm concerned, Fox did not have a great tournament.
Fox hasn't had a great year, period. End of conversation.
No, and quite frankly, that is probably one of the major reasons that the New York Rangers have struggled as much as they have.
Sure. 1,000%.
Because when he's on his game, he's a Norris Trophy winning defenseman with Igor Shesterkin behind him. And it's just
the fact that
it's just not there.
And I know they beat Pittsburgh the next day, but the fact that they came straight out of break and played the Buffalo Sabres, who are the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings, and gave up 5 goals with Igor Shesterkin in net in the first period, tells you all you need to know.
Really breaks your heart, doesn't it?
Yeah. Look, I'm not losing sleep over it, but somebody there better be.
I think Peter Laviolette is getting desperate.
I don't think Peter Laviolette has anything to do with it because he doesn't know what else to do.
I agree with you.
As a coach, you're at wit's end. To be honest, and I say this with all the respect in the world to Peter Laviolette, I don't know what he's still doing there. I don't know why that move wasn't made a while ago.
In November, I said it in November. And then they lost 2 games embarrassingly, and I thought it was going to happen.
Like
the fact that we're still sitting here in February is insane.
Well, at this point, it's not going to happen probably. Or if it does, it's like
no.
If it does, it's an ass backwards way of thinking.
If it does, it's with 20 games left and interim finishes the season out, and then they try again next year. Like
with whomever they can think of who's available, I guess.
Woodcroft.
It's not a bad guess. I have another theory.
Wow. Are you going to go the way I think you're going to go?
Where am I going then?
The mustache himself?
No, not at all.
Because
that's
likely true.
No, I'm envisioning one that would involve another coaching change to happen.
Who are you thinking?
Mike Sullivan.
Oh.
If
if
he doesn't stick in Pittsburgh after this year, like they missed the playoffs again, he doesn't stick. Could you see him coaching the Rangers?
Frankly, he'll be there as long as Sidney Crosby wants him there, and I'm pretty sure Sidney Crosby wants him there.
That's fine. Like,
I think that's the situation in Pittsburgh right now.
Frankly. And if that's the case, then like, and I still think the world, like, and I know this is like a hard thing from a Philadelphia perspective. I still think the world of Sidney Crosby as a player.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong.
And he had a hell of a Four Nations tournament.
No, but then if that's the way this is, then as long as he's there, Sullivan's there, or whatever you want to call it, then have fun missing the playoffs for the next 3 years.
Frankly, I think the organization has decided Sid's going to get what Sid wants. If we don't make the playoffs for a little while, that's okay.
It's fine. Then whatever, because then prepare to be lapped by other teams.
And I think that is pretty likely to happen over the next couple of years. I'm not trying to paint the Flyers as a perfect team by any stretch of the imagination, and that their thinking is perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But you are seeing some really weird situations with teams that you would put in the playoffs most of the time. Yep.
The Rangers and the Penguins in particular, and or better yet, the Rangers, the Bruins. Pittsburgh all those years, they're now going to miss probably multiple years in a row. Like, these are your franchises that you model. They're your model franchises.
Well, and what do all those franchises have in common? Bit of an aging superstar, right?
Sure.
Right. And I don't know how Washington has broken out of it.
I was going to say, who are you considering the aging superstar in New York? Because
how old is Artemi Panarin?
Not old enough that I would put him in the same category as your Crosby and your Marchand.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Is he on the other half of it? Probably. Yeah, sure. I get that.
He's 33.
But yeah, but see, there's a difference between the guys who are 33 and the guys who are like 37 that you're trying to get the last little bit out of.
Sure. But was Artemi Panarin ever on the same echelon as Sidney Crosby? Really?
No.
Okay. So when he starts slowing down...
hang on. I want to pull that back for 1 second. As a rookie...
As far as a hockey player?
Now, hold on. As an
overall hockey player.
Just listen. Just hear me out.
Okay.
As a rookie in Chicago, probably not. Not as a rookie. And then I think, to be honest, he eventually ended up there more and more and more as a Ranger because of market. Otherwise, he was buried in a market that wasn't there yet.
Columbus.
Right. Like, and it's no disrespect to what Columbus has built. It's just, it wasn't the same thing. It didn't carry the same weight as Crosby, Pittsburgh. Almost literally following in the footsteps of Lemieux, or
I'm talking about
Boston.
On the ice. I'm talking about on the ice. Has Artemi Panarin ever taken over the game on a consistent night in, night out basis like Sidney Crosby?
Yes, there have been years with the Rangers that he has. That's the point. But it took too long.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
That's what and that's why I'm saying he had years where he was a take over the game player in Columbus too. It's just you're in Columbus.
Okay. And
sorry.
Why isn't he doing that anymore?
Because that team is dysfunction with a capital D.
Okay.
And that really doesn't have anything to do with him as a player as much. I think everybody naturally just listen, if you're not having fun, what's the point?
But how many more cracks at it do you have with him at a high level? You're running out.
Oh, well, sure.
And
you're probably down to like whatever contract he signs. Well, he's on a long-term contract. I'm not saying that, but you know what I mean. Like you're down to the point where you're at like 3 more really good years of that contract number-wise if he's with the right situation, and then you're bringing him down the lineup to get whatever's left and putting him behind somebody who does it in his place, right? Like, like hypothetically speaking, and it's not the same position or anything like that, but if he were to be in Chicago again and now he's behind Bedard, all right, he's behind Bedard. I don't need him to be the take over the game player. I want him to complement my take over the game player. But he's always, especially in New York, he's really always had to be the guy. And then on top of it, you got what, 4 guys who don't look anything like their usual selves. Zibanejad doesn't look like himself. Kreider doesn't look like himself. Fox doesn't look like himself. And by proxy, it makes your goaltender not look like himself a lot.
Well, and maybe it's not so much as an aging superstar as that core got themselves on the wrong side of 30 real quick. Right? You have Panarin at 33, you have Zibanejad at 31, you have Trocheck at 31, you know, Riley Smith is 1,000 years old, Chris Kreider has been around forever.
But there comes a point when
take over.
There also comes a point, and we've had conversations about this with different teams before with the core thing. There comes a point when the core it's got to be split up in some capacity. And there's an element to it where, like, we're talking about the Rangers specifically here, but this is what Boston's going through, because for Boston, it just took a little while longer for them to feel the waves of the core breaking up. It happened organically. It happened as organically as it possibly can happen. Your captain and defenseman retired. Your next captain, who was your best center that you've ever had in franchise history, retired. That's just the nature of the business. Your 2 goalies, and you replaced your 2 goalies with 2 more really good goalies, but it doesn't mean that it always equates to success.
Well, and then you trade Linus Ullmark, and that was a decision.
But I don't think Swayman's necessarily bad. It's just the rest of the team is not what you had when Swayman was piling up wins, however long.
I think one of your biggest problems in Boston is the fact that Jeremy Swayman didn't have a training camp. And why would you trade Linus Ullmark when you don't have Jeremy Swayman signed, and Linus Ullmark still had 1 year left on his deal? And what are you doing? But anyway,
trying to figure out how to trying to squeeze every last ounce out of it. But anyway, absolutely. So you get into the Four Nations thing and the final and all that, and what the thing was so I guessed. I don't normally do the overtime guess thing. I did put a guess out before that overtime, and I guessed the wrong one of 2 of the obvious choices. I picked Crosby. It was McDavid. All right, fine. I just assumed, because I don't care how bad of a game Crosby looked like he had leading up to that. I don't care about any of that stuff. I've seen too much. I've seen it happen too often to know that's his stage. Give him one shot.
The only hockey player, in the history of the game to be more clutch when wearing their country's sweater is Marie-Philippe Poulin.
Probably, yeah.
It's Marie-Philippe Poulin,
Sidney Crosby.
And that's no disrespect to Sid.
I don't think anybody would. Sid wouldn't dispute that.
Nope. That's the list. It's 1, 2.
Well, the funny part was,
if you want to throw Haley Wickenheiser in the conversation, I'll listen.
So the funny part, by the way, but the funny part is that, so I almost had it right on the other side, because the U.S. player I picked was Brady Tkachuk, and he had a look.
Yep. That game was so much fun. Like, the quality of hockey was so high, and it had that same vibe as the Stanley Cup final, where you can tell that everybody there is hurt.
He's playing a little bit through it.
Everybody is banged up in that lineup. It's only been 4 games as opposed to the 8 weeks, the 4 rounds that we typically get in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But man, the Tkachuk brothers really tried to put 4 rounds worth of physicality into those 4 games.
Well, and that's, to be fair, that's what I think US's downfall was you have Matthew Tkachuk sitting on the bench for long portions of the last handful of games because he's feeling something.
Oh, he's dead man walking.
Right. And then you don't have McAvoy. And couldn't pull the card of, let's get Quinn Hughes in here.
I do have to say, though, just putting a little bit of a bow on Four Nations here. It was an incredible tournament. It was a lot of fun. It was really high-level hockey. Any of the games are rewatchable. Like, go back and rewatch any of these games, and you're gonna have a good time.
I think it's been so incredible to watch the aftermath of it. Like, absolutely. The conversation, the fact that, like I kind of said, I joked, I've been doing this like media tour of sorts in a way with, and the thing is that I'm not going anywhere crazy. I'm on the station just constantly, but it was, I did the 6 to 7 1 hour show on Friday night, which was the immediate after the Four Nations was over. I did the Saturday morning show, which was a combination of talking about Four Nations, talking about the Flyers being back, playing Edmonton, blah, blah, blah. But I do that one. I was on again this afternoon. Now we're back into second half mode. It's not as much Four Nations, but you knew Four Nations is going to come up in different situations. Right? Like we were going to sit down and do our first show in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about it because of course we're going to talk about it. We talked about it through the whole thing as it was happening. We were back and forth the whole time anyway. So
the group chat was lively. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it just it's transporting me into the past in a way where it's like I don't recall there being anything quite like this, since pre-lockout.
Well,
like
and
where there was that much discussion around the NHL.
The other thing that I think is uniquely exciting here.
Go ahead.
Unlike most international tournaments where there's a 2 or a 3 or a 4-year gap, we get the Olympics in like 11 months.
We get the Olympics in 11 months.
We get right back around to it.
We get the Olympics in 11 months. 2 years after that, we get a World Cup of Hockey again because that was announced.
The Olympics.
And
I assume at that point we'll be on a fairly regular every other year international schedule, which, by the way, hilariously, Connor McDavid said, yeah, that's enough. That's about right. I got a kick out of that because of the toll it took on the body. But the fact that we get the Olympics next year and you have Team Canada as the reigning defending champs, that team's probably going to come back mostly intact. You have Team USA with a chip on their shoulder, right? We beat you in the round robin, and that team is probably also going to come back mostly intact. And then you have all of the international players, the guys that I talked about earlier being shot out of a cannon, who all have a chip on their shoulder with something to prove. Leon Draisaitl in Canada, and Nico Hischier in Switzerland, Leon Draisaitl in Germany. I don't know why I said Canada. Leon Draisaitl in Germany.
That's where he plays his regular NHL games.
I apologize to Oilers fans and also Leon Draisaitl. He's a scary man. Germany, Leon. Deutschland. Thank you.
Yes. You're going. Funny. You went Nico Hischier. I would go Roman Josi too for Swiss players. Absolutely, that comes into play. Everybody from Sweden and Finland is right back in this mix as well. And then you've got the Olympic athletes from Russia.
Yep, you got the Czech team. You got
the Czech team.
There's
the Slovakia.
The Olympics are going to be so much fun. And the other thing is, and I heard people mentioning this, especially when it was the conversation was surrounding Finland's defense.
Yeah.
Finland's defense, there are only, I think it was 11 Finnish defensemen in the NHL.
And then 3 of them got hurt.
8 or 9 of them got the call for this roster, or 10 of them got the call for this roster.
Yeah, 3 of them got hurt.
Only one NHL defenseman who was Finnish and played NHL games this year was not ever a part of this team, and that's Ville Heinola.
Yes.
Sorry, Billy. But I heard people saying that if they could pull from outside the NHL, if they could pull from the European leagues, Finnish, then they would have a better team. And I trust those people because I don't know the Finnish youth system like that. But if that's the case, man, the Olympics are gonna be. You also
don't think that they couldn't have eventually gotten a better goal, and I'm not better goaltending too.
Yes. Well, and the other thing is the fact that these rosters were announced in December and then never touched. Well, until pull out
right up against it.
Right.
Real quick, because we do want to move on, obviously.
Yeah.
Do we want to? I brought up goaltending. Do we want to bring up some really quick the Flyers players and how they fared for a minute? Because I kind of want to gloss over 2 of them pretty quickly here because
Sam Ersson was the only goalie to beat the United States in regulation.
Well, here's where I was going with this. Travis Konechny only played in 2 games anyway, so that was kind of it was an on again, off again thing. He did not play. Ironically, what were the 2 games he didn't play?
The U.S. games.
Both of them, of which his style was perfect for.
Would have been
spectacular. I thought Travis Sanheim actually didn't do too bad for the 3 games he played. He played more than I thought I expected him to.
I saw.
I know he had a rough one.
Him. Right.
I know he had a rough one like in the beginning. I get that.
Yeah, the Sweden game. Yeah. But he played
Right,
okay
but
against the Americans.
the Sweden game that they lost 2-1.
Yeah, I know.
It wasn't that bad. And then he played really well in both games against the US.
Yeah, no, he was fine. I will say, I know
Or
I
wait a minute. Wait. I'm sorry. No. He didn't play in the Sweden game.
Oh,
Sanheim.
no, you're right.
So it was the Finland game.
Okay, maybe that's it. Okay. I don't remember, to be honest with you. This whole tournament was a blur of mashed up teams.
Whatever, and it's whatever it was. Anyway, I didn't think Sanheim fared that bad. I think he did what they intended for him to do, right?
He was fine. Yeah.
Sam Emerson had the best performance of any Flyer player.
Absolutely.
And it was really cool. Like
standout.
That as that third period progressed, knowing, and again, I know there's a caveat on the US was able to sit out a few guys. Although,
I mean, this is a tournament where you only had 2 spares. Like, you're still playing 90% of Team USA's roster. Like, it's not.
Well, here was the other thing I was going to bring up is we didn't know it at the time, but the U.S. is sitting out Charlie McAvoy for that game because he's going to eventually not be available. At the time, everybody was going
crazy.
Right. At the time, it was, well, that's obviously load management here. They're just resting him. Be ready for the championship. And then he wasn't available for it. And same thing with Matthew.
If you want to look it up on social media, the whole story is gnarly, but he ended up with like an infection in his shoulder and it had to get like irrigated. It is gnarly stuff. Okay. Anyway, continue.
Same thing with Matthew Tkachuk, who like the injury clearly affected him beyond that game. So it wasn't like just getting a rest in that time was enough. Mm-hmm. You know, by the end of that game, Brady Tkachuk wasn't playing at the end of it anymore. Austin Matthews didn't play. It was like, okay, I get it. But you still have all those other guys on that roster. Like, it's a good roster. Also, you're still facing Jack Hughes and you're facing Jack Eichel.
Totally. Also, I know everyone and their mother has said it, but I'm gonna just go ahead and say it here too. Please, for the love of God, can we get Brady Tkachuk into the playoffs? Holy smokes, he's gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
That's an absolute madness. And there are game 4 or 5 of round 2 when murder becomes legal. Brady Tkachuk's just gonna.
So I'm pulling up the playoff standings really quick because I'm pretty sure that like just looking at, and this might be just the East side alone. Yeah, I mean, okay, it might be the answer might be 3 honestly, and 2 out of the 3 would make it, but give me Ottawa, Columbus, Ottawa like it is now, Ottawa, Detroit, Columbus. Mm-hmm. Any combination of those 3, I think I would love to see.
Detroit, Boston.
What?
Is it Islanders, Boston? That's what it's
no.
Right.
That was not me asking what you said. That was, are you kidding me with the Islanders being in there? Please.
Listen,
because I think Detroit would be fun. I think Ottawa would definitely be fun. I think Columbus would be a great story. I kind of think that anybody else that we could possibly mention, if I keep looking higher than that, is probably going to make it.
Yeah.
Like
unless the Devils are frauds and they fall out.
The only issue with the Devils at this point is that they've played more games than everybody else, so it's all ball in everybody else's court.
That's what I'm saying.
But they've built up an 8-point margin with that.
Yeah, but here's the thing: the Columbus is about to go on a run. It's fine. They're taking the 3rd spot.
No, let them. I still think they make the playoffs. Is my point.
I know. Well, no, I'm saying that's fair. All right. 4 Nations was a lot of fun. Let's talk about the upcoming Flyers games, and then we'll go ahead and get out of here.
Yep.
It's a pretty easy week, and by easy, I mean easy to explain. Not going to be an easy game of hockey. But you got Tuesday, Thursday, Pittsburgh, and then Winnipeg.
A very different Pittsburgh Penguins team than you played a couple weeks ago, because at that time, no Crosby, no Malkin, no Rust. It was, and you still only won that game barely, but that's already a difference. And then.
But also, no Paling. Was Tippett in that game?
No.
Right. So
no.
It's also
by that point it was no Tippett, no Ristolainen, no Paling,
that's the last game before the break, so that's no anybody.
No Pelletier, no. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else.
Kuzmenko.
Well, Kuzmenko played.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, but not really. He hadn't gotten a whole lot of time with the team. That's a little bit.
He had an assist on the first goal of the game.
Yeah. I mean, listen, he's going to do better this game. It's fine.
By the way, because there was some weather going on, so I kind of bailed. I had to bail on that game a little early. So I didn't make it through through to the post game from the Pittsburgh game. So Saturday was my first kind of chance to interact with Andrei Kuzmenko. What a funny guy.
Oh man,
Oh, what a character.
I saw his availability and it was really funny.
He is a character.
Yeah, he's a funny guy, and I know we've talked about him. Maybe
Now, can you imagine? Now, by the way, can you imagine playing? It for him, it was his second game. Pelletier, it was his first, right? Can you imagine playing your first or second game or whatever it is, and then the very next day is the carnival, and you're just thrown into this world where the fans are here, and
I wonder if they just replace time slots.
I'm sure. Well, no,
did Frost and Farabee time slots just get? I know those
they
people got
them.
refunded and blah blah blah. But I just mean as far as the schedule goes, did they just?
I mean, there were pictures of them doing pictures, so yeah, I guess so.
That's what I'm. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sure. Why wouldn't you want to go meet these guys? I heard the carnival was a lot of fun. I saw a lot of the pictures on social media. But again, this week 2 games, Pittsburgh. You finish the week off, and by finish the week, I mean until our next show here, which again will be next Monday, probably for a Tuesday morning release. Winnipeg. We'll see. Winnipeg, one of the better teams in the league. Still, are they
arguably the best.
It's
they're basically right a back Washington. And forth game. Well, I literally described it today as every day it changes.
Right.
Winnipeg's the best. Now Washington's the best. Now Winnipeg's the best. Now Washington's the best.
Yep. One of the best teams in the league on the road.
Connor Hellebuck.
Right. I know it's only a 2-game road trip. I'm not saying it's a big long road trip, but you get through those little 2 games off, and then you're on a fat home stretch.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about the fat home stretch on our next show because it's going to lead right into it. So.
Yes, but that might be a little bit of a scheduled loss on Saturday, little bit, but obviously you hope they can put up a good effort against Winnipeg.
I mean, it depends. It could be a really good effort because it's again one of those teams like you've played. Think about how well you've played against some of the teams that have that.
Yep.
You've given yourself some good performances against the Florida, Jersey. Well, some of them. One of the Jersey games is awful, but one of them was really good. Really good, and one of them was grinded out good, good.
You get the W, get the 2 points good.
Right. I mean, you played Washington hard despite losing.
Yep.
But still, that was competitive.
Listen, this team throughout John Tortorella's tenure has proven to be very game. And
I mean, even Edmonton's 7th in the league right now, so them too.
You
just beat them.
And that's what I mean. And if you come out here, I know I made a joke about it a little bit earlier in the show, but if you come out here and get 4 out of 6 points, 5 out of 6 points, all of a sudden, whether you like it or not, you're in the conversation. And that may muddy things around the trade deadline. That may, there's a lot going on with there, but this is, as I say on every show, this is another big week as far as Flyers games go. Is there anything else you wanted to say about this week's games, or
not really? I mean,
okay,
it's because it's kind of the column before the, like you said, that big chunk of home games. I get one more. I get one more, and then a nice little pause, and then just
the Wells Fargo Center a lot.
Well, the gauntlet of it's 7 and 12. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Somehow or other, they only have one back-to-back in that whole thing. But
yeah, but it's a lot of hockey. If you thought
we can do a lot worse than 2 afternoon games on a weekend, though.
Absolutely. But if you found yourself thinking over the last 2 weeks, man, I wish there was more hockey on today. Get ready, because there's a lot of Flyers hockey coming. We will be here every week to cover it here. Coming towards the end of the season, we may have some, we'll get there. We'll be here for the next several shows at least. Again, we've shifted into that Monday, Tuesday release schedule, so not as much on the Sundays, a little bit into the week, but make sure you're following us on Twitter at YWT Podcast. We post every time a new episode goes out. Follow Kevin on all your social media at Kevin_Durso everywhere except for Blue Sky. That's just at Kevin Durso. Other than that, man, it's been a good couple of weeks. You got the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. You had the Four Nations tournament. I have to say, I ended the last show with a very confident shout for the Eagles, and man, I feel good about that. They looked great. The game was never really in doubt. Four Nations was a lot of fun. We will be back next week talking about more. So until then, see ya.